Let's see who is going to be the surprise of the season and sneak into the top 8 of this very stacked tournament. In the top left side, we're looking at the main base of the man who surprised enemies and friends in the group stage. Can he continue that momentum here in the playoffs? It is the German Protoss GunGFuBanDa.
Who had an absolutely stellar group stage. He faces off against the blue Protoss player in the bottom right. He is Krystianer. Playing for Team Blazer. And you know what, Kev? I think my favorite thing about the PvP now is that I can definitively say after the last 2 weeks, there is absolutely nothing that could surprise me anymore. We've seen it all. We've had the proxies, we've had the cheese, we've had the super greedy plays, we've had the straight to air, we've had the +1 armor mothership. We've pretty much gone down the darkest depths of PvP. But perhaps if you have any insight to share for Krystianer versus GunGFu, I feel like we maybe lean more towards normal type strategies than the absurd ones.
Yes, but I do think we're going to see a lot of aggressive stuff, especially from Krystianer. He was very honest in the interview yesterday, where he was obviously over the moon with his victory, but he also said, Gerald, this is way better than me in the whole disruptor thing. So I had the feeling that if I was going to win, I had to do it before. I had to stick to the relatively simple gateway units and just kind of try to, find openings before it would ever turn into disruptor wars. What we also know from Krystianer, I think that has been pretty obvious throughout the season, is that he's not the biggest fan of the whole one-gate meta. As we do have a pylon going down, actually. Krystianer dropping a pylon and trapping not one, but 2 probes of GunGFu. That's actually kind of big, man. Now there are 2 probes not mining at all, and you basically can't use that mineral patch, because you can see that 1 probe has to go all the way around the mineral patch on the right side. This is actually a pretty cool little start. But yeah,
you've crushed the efficiency of 3 total workers with that. Yeah, that's pretty nice.
Absolutely. The TLDR is just that I think we're going to see a lot of aggressive stuff coming from both players. I think GunGFu will probably go, for a 1-gate fast expand on some of the maps with a ramp, and then I'm really curious to see what Krystianer is going to do about it.
Yeah, very, very interesting situation as that Stargate is coming through. 2 adepts for Krystianer are moving across.
No probe.
And this is supposed to be that stereotypical spot where the Protoss just throws down the shield battery to block it off, but he may not have enough of a heads up to do that. Okay, the probe is in position. Let's see if he reacts.
Yep, I was actually very worried because the probe was a bit late. I would let that shade finish off for sure. Because, you can at least pick up 1 probe, and the Stalkers were a bit out of position, and now you can still just shade away very defensively. So not a bad start for Krystianer, I'd say. The pylon block worked out, and now you get a free worker kill as well. Did he get a bit of a scout off there? No, he did not see the Stargate with his adepts. GunGFu could lose another worker here. Nope, this time around it was on the right side of the wall, so that's fine. Krystianer has expanded as well, but he's following this up with a robo, and once more it's that very heavy adept opening. This many adepts could become problematic if the Oracle flies into his main base, but he is going to get a safety battery there.
Very, very good move as that battery and the natural is coming through too. But like you were saying, it is a lot of adepts. So the Stalkers are coming in for the pokes. The other side is that it's very difficult to retreat against this. So there's the recall as he's kind of overwhelmed by numbers. And what an awkward spot, because usually, do we see this many adepts early on in PvP, Kev? He's going to look to trade these out for mostly probes eventually. You're not really holding on to these for the long run, normally anyway.
Krystianer found a lot of success with this many adepts yesterday against Gerald, so I guess it's not super surprising that he believes in it again. And GunGFu losing 1 Stalker is a big deal and really wants to make sure that these adepts don't make it into his main. With this many adepts, you can sometimes consider letting a shade finish up and just go for it. Try to gun down a pylon or a battery, but he doesn't go for it this time around, and I think it makes sense because there is an Oracle still chilling at home as well. So it's double Oracle for GunGFu, who now probably feels that it's time to hunt down some of these adepts. Activates Pulsar Beam, will definitely get 1 with very good micro. He can get a second one. Shade finishes up though. Like, even though GunGFu is not losing a lot to these adepts, what is definitely happening is that he's still not mining of his natural, so he is definitely starting to fall behind a bit economically, loses another worker there, and actually doesn't even get all these adepts yet. in a weird way, this is all working out really well for Krystianer because he's up 7 workers.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing a pretty good amount of economic damage and creating a weird amount of pressure that GunGFuBanDa is just doesn't seem to have a fantastic read on yet. And the follow-up turns into Blink. So, you know, the Adepts, it's like, okay, we were never going to commit to that to be the end-all, be-all of the strategy. But if I can trade these out for a few more probes, great, grand, wonderful. And 37 to 31 on 2 bases is very nice. Going to grab one more on the way out, too. So for Krystianer, I don't think you can ask for much more than what he's been able to do with this, Roddy. Is it enough, though?
I definitely think it is enough for now. He's also going up to 3 bases a bit quicker than GunGFu is. The one thing that he still needs to worry about are those 2 oracles, right? Because you want to have all your stalkers fighting the stalkers of GunGFu, because those stalker numbers are dead even at the moment, 9 against 9. But then you need to make sure that you don't open the doors for these oracles to fly in and kill 10 workers, because then all his hard work will just go up in vain. But so far, so good. For a split second there, GunGFu is like, shall I go for those sentries? But I think that would have been a wrong decision, and he agreed.
Yeah, and we got a couple stalkers working in the mineral line over there, just in case those oracles come back, since 2 of them can overpower a single shield battery. And I guess that's the strength for GunGFuBanDa, is he has this opportunity to constantly threaten, and it makes it a little bit more difficult for Krystianer to move out. So take advantage of that, do as much with it as you can. And on Krystianer's side, well, he gets an observer out, so he can kind of go over and see. Does get revelated very quickly, though. GunGFuBanDa on top of denying that vision for his opponent.
Yep. And Krystianer does not have a War Prism or a Gateway on the other side of the map, so he should normally not be crazy stressful. He does blink forward after his hallucinated Phoenix spots the Oracle, and he gets the first Oracle immediately, gets on top of this Nexus as well, but GunGFu wants to obviously keep that Nexus safe. Now Krystianer is a bit stuck. Maybe he's getting carried away here, Nate. Will kill 1 Stalker, but he's been losing a lot of Stalkers himself.
And giving chase, too, is GunGFuBanDa, so blinking right down that ramp after him and picking off a decent amount of those forces, but they both lost a very similar number of stalkers. That resource is lost just barely in GunGFu's favor, and Oracle does head to the pocket base, but the stalkers are ready to push it back.
Yeah. Still an 8-worker lead for Krystianer, but I'm sure that Krystianer is aware of the fact that he has taken the tiny base, the pocket expand, 2 mineral patches less to work with, and 1 gas to work with less. So if nothing happens in this game, in a minute from here on out, we're going to love this game for GunGFu, because the 3rd base of GunGFu is obviously a real one. It's going to take a little while before it's fully saturated, but knowing Krystianer, Nate, we are probably going to go pedal to the metal soon and do something with the fact that we were mining more than our opponent for the majority of the last 5 minutes. If you take a look at that graph, it's actually a pretty big advantage for Krystianer.
Yeah, he's making a lot of money, and started early off, right? We were talking about that 7-worker difference, so he's been able to leverage that the whole way through. He's getting his 3rd base up now. It is a little bit later than GunGFu's, though, and GunGFu has his fully saturated on the minerals, so he has been doing his best to pull out as much as he can to tilt things the other way.
Mm-hmm. This but really is Gerald against Krystianer all over again, with the RoboBay going down for GunGFu. So GunGFu can obviously stabilize here, but what he needs to do is he needs to start getting a lot of static defenses. He's already getting an extra battery. I wouldn't hate a random cannon or 2. He actually has 700 minerals, Nate, so you can definitely wipe in a couple of cannons from that. If he doesn't do that, I have the feeling that Krystianer is going to swarm him soon with a lot of stalkers and a lot of zealots, just the way that young Polish Protoss player likes to get the job done in this matchup.
Yeah, catching up on that front base. It has more resources, but he has been pulling in the money from that pocket for a little while. Takes out the shield battery first, and you said it, and he's got a ton of zealots ready to charge forward. There is a battery at the 3rd base. We're going to see the overcharge come through, but there's still not a really great answer for the zealots, and the battery itself does get sniped. Guardian shield still rocking and rolling for the sentries to make this army as difficult to stop as possible. Reinforcements from the natural are not going to be able to do it. The photon cannon finishing in that 3rd mineral line. Stalkers are blocking up the zealots a little bit. The SimCity working in his favor, but Krystianer has the prism here. He's going to continue to reinforce. That disruptor needs a big shot and will get nothing. Killed by the zealots. GG. Krystianer takes the 1st game in this series.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, really cool opening again with the Adepts. He's actually getting very good with that stuff. And you can see a little facial reaction from him there as well. Tiny thumbs up. He is completely happy with how that game played out. Just a textbook Krystianer game there. The man keeps it simple, loves his stalkers, loves his zealots. And if you want to tack up to disrupt us against this, it's doable for sure. But you need a lot of static defenses. And there was one extra battery, but that battery was exposed, so it got picked off immediately. And a couple of these cannons, they just weren't there. One cannon finished up towards the tail end of that entire fight, but that was just a bit too late, because that entire fight looks really different with 3 cannons and an extra battery somewhere. Then it would be so much harder for Krystianer to get the job done.
Yeah, very, very, very crazy game. Wild to see that GunGFuBanDa, after looking like he's been pretty fantastic in this tournament outside of that series against Raynor, just going up against Krystianer's very, very fun PvP style for that first game. Good funky start to this one, Roddy, as we go to Cosmic Sapphire for game number 2. Any expectations for this map for PvP?
I think just double gate on the high ground for both players, but I can see Krystianer going for 3-gate aggression here. 3-gate robo, 3-gate aggression. GunGFu might be the expander. Krystianer might be the one base aggressor. But, you know, just to put things in perspective now, Nate, Krystianer is now on a 4-map win streak in the playoffs. He was down 0-2, won 3 games in a row yesterday, wins the first one here. For GunGFu, it's the complete opposite. He is now 0-4 in the playoffs. And we often say it, but momentum is a very real thing, and it's very powerful in StarCraft 2. So this man really needs to start turning things around and get a little bit of that momentum in his corner. In the top left side, we're looking at the main base of our German Protoss down 0-1 in this very important best of 5. This is GunGFuBanDa.
And his opponent, spawning in the bottom right as the blue Protoss player, he is Krystianer. Excited to see what these guys bring out on this one. If it's that Stargate build again from GunGFuBanDa, if he has a maybe a different thought process about the way that he wants to handle all those adepts if they do make their way over, or if we see something a little bit more on the crazy side. But it looks like Krystianer just wants to get over there for the scout as fast as possible, make sure there's no very quick nexus being taken, or any proxy, I guess.
Yep, it's definitely mostly to prevent the nexus before core. Pylon low ground, gateway low ground is one thing, but you don't want to let them get away with nexus before core, because then you put yourself in a spot where you really have to go for crazy one base aggression. And I can understand that maybe if that's not something that Krystianer wanted to do, he just doesn't want to find himself in that scenario where whatever he had in mind suddenly has to change it. He's trying to do that pylon thing again, by the way, but this time around it does not seem like he's getting the pylon off yet. There is a little moment. This would be the moment to go for it. It's kind of cute. This was a thing many years ago, Nate, but completely fallen out of fashion. And he's pretty good with it, and he does it again.
Oh! He had to do it to him.
Yeah.
Oh. Brutal.
You can see the reaction there of GunGFu in the camera as well. He mumbled something, probably something not like very polite in German. This is annoying, man. Like, this actually really does slow you down a lot.
Yeah, looking at the income, that's it's a difference of about 100 minerals, a little bit more per minute for the mining that's lost. And I mean, those probes still take up supply even while they can't do anything. The one that's just stuck in the back. So this is it's just cruel. It's just PvP cruelty we're witnessing, Rotterdam. Absolute savagery. But Krystianer has really been making a name for himself with these kinds of plays. And like you said, this map streak that he's been on, he's going to go into that double adept again. He's already got 2 out, 2 more on the way, and he's the one getting the Stargate this time. So I love it, because he's going to try to bring that pressure in the natural, right, with the adepts. And obviously if he can shade into the main, he will. And the Oracle as well is just going to... GunGFuBanDa is going to have a really hard time leaving his base.
This is very cute. Krystianer is waiting to reveal adept number 3 and 4. You see that? He could obviously use them for that extra bit of DPS, but he doesn't want to give GunGFu that confirmation. It's going to be 4 adepts. What also allowed Krystianer to get a great scout off was that pylon, because then he saw that the pylon was being attacked by a sentry and a stalker, and that actually is not going to do very well against 4 adepts at all. We do have a great hallucinated Phoenix scout here in the end, so GunGFu knows about the Stargate, knows about the Oracle, and actually Krystianer is getting a safety Oracle in his own main base. We know that he doesn't need one, but there are really no room for, or there really is no room for errors here against 4 adepts. He lets the adept shade finish up. He feels that this is enough to gun down a battery, and it is, but very quick warp in there on a safety cybernetic score for GunGFu.
Words I never thought I'd hear, Roddy. A safety cybernetic score, warping on top. Just going for the building that will give him the most amount of hit points in that space so that the adepts can't just punch through. And that is such a gutsy call to go for as Krystianer, and he's going to shade back over. He lets him in, a little bit of a bait play. Force fields one of them out. So now there's only 2 adepts to deal with, but now he can shade straight to the mineral line if he wants to try and just YOLO dive onto the probes, but he's not going to do it this time. Just recognizes that GunGFu was very ready for it.
There is double Oracle on the map there, so GunGFu needs to be very, very, very careful, because 2 adepts and 2 Oracles synced up. Even if you have 3 Stalkers in a battery in position, you could still end up losing a lot of workers. I think Krystianer definitely made a bit of a slip up there, letting one of these Oracles get picked off. It feels that GunGFu is really counting on the fact that this is single Oracle nade, but it's not. And that means that the doors are open, but Krystianer didn't go for the main. Oh my goodness, if these Oracles would have gone into the main base just a bit higher and would have gone for it immediately, he could have killed a lot of workers there.
Yes, a lot of energy on these too. So all they need is a little bit of time, and every single probe in that base would be dead. So a very, very tenacious defense here by GunGFu, though. He had the adepts break down the door. He had to make the last second warp in. He has done a much better job of preventing that huge gap that we were discussing in that first map, right? I mean, you were talking about 31 versus 38 workers, and now a little bit tougher.
Revelation does land. Krystianer could have been in a very, very good spot. Instead, this is an even game. The Oracles do still find a bit of an opening. Before Blink is done, Stalk is derping around the Nexus. Good Oracle movement by Krystianer. Really does feel like we are watching a player just hit his stride. A lot of the little things are going his way. And even if there is still a beauty arrow here and there, he's playing well, Nate. He is really playing well.
Yeah, he is. I mean, this is where we're seeing them push each other. GunGFuBanDa demonstrating that play that he's been able to use to get himself so far up in this tournament. But Krystianer is going to continue to shark around looking for that opportunity. Oracle almost getting killed, though, on the top edge.
Yep, that was cool stalker movement by GunGFu. He anticipated that escape route, so he had the stalkers there, and Krystianer definitely wasn't paying attention because he's kind of stopped right next to the stalkers. But unfortunately for GunGFu, he was 1 hit short from actually getting the kill. And that means he still needs to worry about them, and that's really annoying. If you're playing PvP and it's turning into Blink Stalkers against Blink Stalkers, and the numbers are relatively even, and in this case dead even, 12 Stalkers apiece, it is so freaking annoying when you still have to worry about these 2 Oracles, because you always need to leave basically 2 Stalkers behind in every single mineral line, but that means you have less Stalkers in the front.
Yeah, very, very good point. Like, it's part of that, just keeping him contained, right? And we thought that with the Adept and the Oracle, that's a big focus of what he could do. So now Krystianer has all the Stalkers up towards the front, but GunGFu, without that pressure on him, I think that natural still a little bit wide open. This might be where he goes in. Did not want to bring the second Oracle in since he was worried about that low health getting jumped on by the Blink Stalkers, and he's just going to force the probes away, not really able to kill a bunch. And again, we're really just seeing him hang in there very nicely. Still very even setup between the 2 of them. 17 Stalkers for Krystianer versus 16 of GunGFu, except GunGFu has that Immortal out, and Krystianer will instead be opting for that charge again. We saw that big overwhelming gateway army in the first map. Perhaps just going back to that and trying to overwhelm him, a little swarm action again.
I wouldn't hate it if GunGFu just kind of tries to match Krystianer once, where it's like, all right, you want to play Stalker Zealot, then I play Stalker Zealot too, and then you can obviously go Stalker Zealot Archon, because that's where Archons are incredibly good. Instead, he made an Immortal, and I have to admit, I don't think the Immortal is necessarily a great choice here. What is also kind of funny is that Krystianer has had a Robo for a couple of minutes, never used it. Not a single Observer, not a single War Prism, but GunGFu is just in back-to-back games, going to try to make it up to the Disruptors, but he wants to go there faster, Red Alert style, not 1 Robo Bay, but 2. But I'm pretty sure it doesn't work like that in StarCraft.
No, that's you imagine if you have 2 robo bays, the units go twice as fast, or the upgrades go twice as fast. That would be a fun change. Maybe in another reality, the adepts go to the natural. They are not able to get too much done. He's trying to distract him. Cannot get much work on the 3rd base though, as he's looking with the army, and then going for prong number 3, the oracles into the main base. They're only able to get a single probe, as GunGFu's reaction time has been on point here, Roddy. But I think the story is becoming that GunGFu, he's defending. When does the opportunity for him to get on the map come? Because Krystianer is going for that 4th base, and he's really trying to just take the economic control, as he still had even more probes this whole entire time.
Oh, army's kind of in a very awkward spot. 1 sentry might fall there, but it doesn't. GunGFu was not on top of the fact that he built 2 robos, Nate, or 2 robo bay rather. Like 2 robos is obviously fine. Double robo bay is not so fine, and that means that he has a few less resources to work with. We did just use a recall that Immortal and the sentries are going to be in a bit of an awkward spot. I do like the fact that GunGFu went very heavy on the stalkers for now. But Krystianer is doing that Krystianer thing again, where he's already setting up a lot of zealots. These oracles could still come in handy somewhere, but now there is a cannon in every single mineral line, and that is a big forward blink by GunGFu. He's like, I'm just gonna go for it before you can do your thing. Kind of a cool move. Uses overcharge. Can he save the Nexus? There is a Nova flying towards the stalkers. It seems like he will be able to save the Nexus. Wow, that worked out for GunGFu.
Yeah, I mean, like, every opportunity that Krystianer has been trying to bring in and get aggressive, he has just been ready to defend, and we're really seeing just a great struggle back and forth. But like I was saying, Krystianer has the 4th base, so he's able to use those extra probes a little bit more efficiently, maybe not leaning as much on the tech side. But Roddy, what does the 2nd Stargate mean as GunGFuBanDa tries to move out and immediately steps into that stasis trap?
I think the 2nd Stargate means that he forgot he had a Stargate and he wants to build a couple of Phoenixes to lift the Disruptors, but obviously building 2 at a time is not bad. Zealots are wondering if this is the moment for them to shine. I mean, this is going to be funny because GunGFu obviously does not want to give up on all these Stalkers. I do think those Stalkers can blink away. Yes, they can. Will they blink away as a big Nova? Connects actually with a couple of Zealots, but there are still so many Zealots. Neil Prism shows up. Neil Prism will fall immediately. But if Krystianer can just reset the Disruptor count a little bit, he's going to be more than happy as he gets the Immortal 2 in the end. He's now going up to 5 bases, Nick.
Yeah, this is... Again, he's just continuing to roll that economy forward. So maybe now being able to take somewhat of a trade here is where GunGFu feels like he can get out on the map at long last and just continue to crank out mass stalkers. Krystianer does have that +2 already though, so having it a little bit earlier, you know, it's just these little tiny things, because he hasn't been able to break him, and GunGFu's still been able to expand, just not at that same pace. So I think if you're Krystianer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you just keep trying to take bases, overwhelm economically, and try to starve GunGFu out. But that should work up until the point where the Disruptors can make some big shots.
Yeah, we've got 3 Disruptors, and there is a lot of potential there. That forward blink was questionable as a couple of Stalkers fall. More Stalkers fall to the 2nd Nova. This was a bad attack by Krystianer as he now panic F2s and reveals the Oracles as well. Overcharge has been used. Krystianer needs to disengage, and this is where he needs a different plan. There was definitely potential, but not up that ramp. And you know what's really hurting him is that he doesn't have any observers, so he doesn't see the observers of GunGFu. Very often, GunGFu can anticipate these attacks coming in advance, so he can position his units the way he should, and Krystianer just doesn't know about the fact that GunGFu knows. But if you have your own observer, you would know these things, and he's making life very hard not building a single ops.
What a ridiculous situation we've gotten ourselves into. That double Phoenix production you were mentioning, by the way, has kicked off finally, as recognizing, yep, gonna need something for those Disruptors. And I mean, if the Zealots can get a big surround, the Disruptors don't get those big shots off, and the Stalkers can blink aggressively, then you can really see it all working together. And that's where that economy comes into play, because you need to have that army supply advantage. You need to have that overwhelming force. Even with the Oracle, still thinking about the defensive side. I feel like GunGFuBanDa hasn't been on Krystianer's side of the map like this whole entire game, it feels, since that pylon block at the start, but he is trying to make that cross. However, there's the lift ups we were talking about. The Disruptors taken out of the fight, Roddy. None of them able to land those shots, and Krystianer suddenly looking like a god of PvP.
Yep, that was absolutely perfect. He gets not just the cancel on the balls, but he actually gets the majority of the disruptors too. There are still so many zealots. Now he just needs to be careful that he doesn't take the worst fight ever near an overcharge. One Nova does connect with a couple of the zealots. Will go for the battery. Krystianer definitely needs a few extra zealots, but he's warping these zealots in right now, and this is, I think, where it's going to get kind of tough for GunGfu. As long as the zealots actually go where they are supposed to be going, a lot of zealots are derping, and he may actually be throwing here a little bit, Nate, because GunGfu has still an insane amount of stalkers, and Krystianer does not.
And this is a pretty ridiculous amount of defensive warp-ins for GunGFuBanDa. He has definitely done a good job of having that keel over in terms of the balance of the stalkers versus everything else, even with the disruptors being taken out of play. And I'm just wondering, there are 11 warp gates versus 6. So Krystianer, with that extra income that we've talked about, can continue to reinforce, but he has been throwing his resources away pretty recklessly too. Resources lost currently favors GunGFuBanDa by 8,000. So despite everything that's happened in this game, again, it's just been him weathering blow after blow after blow. And once this next base gets picked up, all of a sudden that economic gap doesn't really seem so big anymore.
Yep, and especially if Krystianer makes another attack like the previous one. It went so well for him in the center of the map, but he got over-eager, and Zealots are really derpy, especially near static defenses. And the Zealots were just not all fighting the Stalkers there. They didn't have the surface area. A much better choice for Krystianer would have been go for the natural, right? The natural is wide open. That's where the Zealots would shine. They would go to town on everything. But that third base location is very choky. GunGfu could micro all the way back towards the fourth base, where he had batteries too. So that just worked out for him in a very big way as a War Prism tried to drop a couple of Zealots. GunGfu is also the one with +3 now. Krystianer never invested in +3. No, with the still Zealots inside of the War Prism. Stalkers are gonna just micro back. There are still 2 disruptors. Krystianer is looking for them, doesn't find them. But just pure Stalker here is actually better than Stalker Zealot, because the Zealots, they just can't all attack at the same time. There are simply too many Stalkers for these Zealots to deal with.
And a little DT counterattack on the northeast side we were just seeing. So some of the probes for Krystianer getting picked off. The Stalkers playing forward, Roddy, but they actually block a lot of the Zealots from being able to move. And then the Disruptor from the north gets a huge shot. And GunGFuBanDa, after being contained, after being pressured, after being hit so many times over and over and over, looks like he has clawed his way back into this game. The Zealots are, of course, always going to be awkward, but he just has such a ridiculous number of Stalkers. It is currently 45 Stalkers with 4 Disruptors for GunGfu against Krystianer's 28 Zealots and 10 Stalkers. So the Disruptors we know can do a lot. The Phoenix are going to go for the lift up, but one big shot will take out about half the Zealots. And this Stalker ball just does not look like it's going to go down anytime soon. Another Zealot warp in from the third base of Krystianer will approach, but there is just so many units actually shoot from the inside, and continuing to use that blink micro is GunGFuBanDa. 32 Stalkers versus 5, not enough to defend here for Krystianer, but GunGfu is going to retreat and collect himself, I suppose, for another attack. Perhaps he's worried about overextending, but he may have been able to just kill him there.
Yeah, I think he's worried because he didn't have a prism, doesn't have a pylon or a gateway there. So I think it makes sense. The trades were fantastic, Nate. Early it was 7.2k resources lost. Now it's 12,000 resources lost more on the side of Krystianer. GunGfu is stabilizing on 5 bases. He's got a bunch of DTs as well. And these are the well upgraded DTs with Shadow Strike and +3. Krystianer is pretty dead here, and I think he knows it. GunGfu now is going to go for a little bit of a wombo combo with DTs at the bottom, his main army in the top right. And Krystianer is going to be kicking himself, man. This could have been a real turning point. He was so close to getting that 2-0 lead, but the fight at the third base in that choke point near all these static defenses, that's the one that really backfired, and that's the one where he lost the game, because up to that point, everything was going well for him.
Yeah, indeed it was. And now it's got to that point where GunGFuBanDa, he built up exactly what he needed to be able to break out. And what a truly fascinating match to witness. 17 and a half minutes of GunGFuBanDa being contained. He's getting pushed by the Adepts. He's got the Oracles trying to come into his natural. They're trying to hit the main base. They're trying to throw Zealots at the third. Like everything that Krystianer could have possibly done to try and break him, he just took it He sat behind a base almost the whole entire match, but that 8,000 resource loss difference tells the story just a little bit too much on the overextending side from Krystianer. He didn't want to go into that disruptor style, and I guess that's kind of what shut it down. But even then, there were still a couple of fights that went his way. But
yeah,
man, GunGFuBanDa is tough.
I mean, that fight in the center of the map was absolutely perfect. He lifted every single disruptor. He actually guaranteed himself the kill on every single disruptor, and the Zealots were able to storm forward. And at that point, there were a lot of Stalkers, but it wasn't that insane amount of Stalkers where the Zealots just don't know what to attack anymore. And the longer the fight went on, the bigger the Stalker number grew. And at that point, having pure Stalkers is actually a lot better than having Stalker Zealot, because the Zealots are just running around. They're often not attacking all at the same time, and they were derping. Some of them were attacking a gateway. Some of them were going for a cannon that was being healed up by a battery. And Krystianer was just bleeding out units at a very rapid pace. And GunGfu was just wiping in Stalker after Stalker. Even with less money and less gateways, his army was growing. Krystianer's army was not. If you resume that game from replay, Nate, and you go through the rocks, you run into the natural, I think the game ends there, because there is no way that GunGfu can micro his way out of that.
Yeah, just a really, really, really impressive game. Because again, GunGfu could not leave his side of the map. He could hardly leave his base at any point without something trying to dive in and pick off either his workers or his infrastructure. So a few big moves. I think even going back to, you were calling it earlier, when he tried to go in for the Nexus, getting that save was just massive. So we finally get to start one of these series without a 2-0 lead, Kev. And that is perhaps the most fun part about it. Very, very close. And if the rest of the series is like that second game, then we are in for a hell of a ride. In the Northeast, we have the red Protoss player. He is GunGFuBanDa.
In the bottom left side of Tropical Sacrifice, we are looking at the main base of the man who was so damn close to winning 5 games in a row in the playoff and put himself in a 2-0 lead. Instead, we're all tied up. How will he bounce back? The Polish Protoss, Krystianer.
Man, oh man, this has been a tough series then so far. Just absolutely wild. Does Tropical Sacrifice shake things up? You do have the ramp into the natural, so maybe something more greedy, but is that too risky against these guys? I don't know.
Yeah, it could have been. There's many Protoss players who would absolutely go for the pilot and the gateway on the low ground and the quick expand strategy, but it seems to be a stylistic thing for these two. Krystianer, we know that he's not a fan of it. I feel like I've seen GunGfu do it in the past quite often, but perhaps he doesn't want to do it because he knows that Krystianer is going to be hyper-aggressive, and then he's like, yeah, that's going to be annoying. And maybe GunGfu is just confident that he can defeat Krystianer in the old school two-gate expand into two-gate expand setup.
Yeah, I definitely think that's interesting to see, especially just because the trends for PvP have been all over the place, but it seems to be a little bit more normal, if that makes sense, in this match. Like we're not having the super out there stuff. I guess maybe the pylon blocks, but I don't think that with the way the minerals work in this map, I don't think you can really do that same kind of you can't lock 2 probes inside of a hex. That's not going to happen here.
No, and that's why I guess we won't see it happening. What we do see happening once more is that Krystianer is absolutely loving the adepts first in PvP. I think it's really cool to throw it in once in a while, and he obviously found some success with it, but going adept every single game almost makes you a bit predictable. There's obviously so many different ways that you can follow this up, and there are different ways to even follow it up tech-wise. Like you could suddenly go for a quick robo and go for a warp prism and drop these adepts in the main base. Let's see, will it be adept number 3 and 4? No, it's 2 adepts into stalkers, so he is switching it up, and I am happy to see that.
So Krystianer moving out with the 2 adepts and has the stalkers this time behind it, not straight into 4. So he'll be looking to kind of generate that same level of pressure, though, because if you're GunGfu, you do have to consider the possibility that there could be more adepts, and that's that thing in the back of your head that can kind of make you be like, maybe I want to be very careful with the probe that's on this ramp. And I think the stalker saw the shades coming over, so he should have plenty of time to react. And there is the battery to block it. And I think we're going to see this dance happen quite a few more times. Krystianer has just been relentless about the adept pressure.
Krystianer is going to go for a Twilight Council this time around, so no Oracles like we had in the previous game. Even though I thought his Oracle play was really good, he does find the 2 Stalkers here, and that is not a fight that GunGFu wants to take with 3 Stalkers against 2 Adepts and 2 Stalkers. 1 Stalker in a bit of a pickle. The Sentry doesn't really help out there. Ooh, almost got the block off there. We don't have energy for a Force Field. Well, GunGFuBanDa is going to be forced to pull probes. And that means that he is taking a bit of a beating here. He needs these extra warp ins. Where will he warp in? On the right side of his wall? If I was Krystianer, I would go for it. I would kill that sentry and kill maybe 1 more stalker. Instead, he is like, no, I like the fact that I will keep my 2 stalkers alive. He is more than happy with the amount of damage he has dealt. He has created a 5-worker lead for himself once more, Nate.
Yeah, this is these little moves, right? And he set himself up very well in the first game with this, and considering that his style in this series has been the economic snowball. He's tried to bring the pressure, take bases behind it, and secure the economic lead and just try and overwhelm with mass numbers of units. When he was able to get that lead at the beginning of game 1, it turned into a very, very dominant big push onto the 3rd base of GunGFu that he just could not get enough to stop. But in game 2, when it was even, that's where we really got to see GunGFu just play a great defensive game, even if that may not have been what he wanted. And he's actually going to turn the shoe on the other foot this time around, Roddy. We have a Dark Shrine coming in with that Robo. So GunGFu is not just going to sit back and be attacked the whole entire time. Even if he has to defend a lot, he's going to give himself the option to get out there and deal some damage.
Pretty smart, because Krystianer is known to be a pretty greedy Protoss. And in that last game, I did point out, right, where he had a Robo pretty early on. So if he needed an Observer, he could have made one. But even when he had the Robo, he didn't make an ops forever. Now we do see a robotics facility go down. The location is going to be interesting. It's in the natural and only powered by a single pylon, Nate. This can actually get very, very dramatic. And this is such a sick scout for GunGFu. If you take a look at the hallucinated Phoenix that's flying around in the main base right now, it's going to see the timing of the Robo, and it's going to see the fact that that Robo is only powered by a single pylon. That is really big, because now I would absolutely go for it.
Yeah, this is a very tense moment, because like you were saying, even with the Robo, he may not immediately go for the Observer. So, and if he doesn't see the pylon, then he may not think that he needs to have it in that spot to defend. So the first DT is going to be warped in, as Krystianer has Stalkers blinking into the main base of GunGFu. The last 3 kind of coming in a little bit slowly. That Twilight Council takes a little bit of shield damage, but not too much. And now I think we start to see the DTs get to work in a little bit, as he's actually got 2 Adepts inside of GunGFu's natural, and he sees the Dark Shrine. So, and
he panics, but the DT is actually going to run into the main base. So it seems that GunGFu is going to settle for damage. Did not want to go for the pylon, was maybe under the impression that there would already be an Observer. We know there wasn't. I mean, this is still going to deal a lot of damage. A lot of probes are not doing their thing at the moment. The only Observer can obviously not be everywhere at once. So I think there is a lot of potential for 1 Dark Templar at the 9 o'clock base at this point. Few extra workers do fall when these guys are playing some wild PvPs here, mate.
Yeah, this is, I mean, this is like really nice to see. GunGFu finally able to strike back, gets the 8 worker kills again. So we're talking about that damage coming in earlier is usually more impactful, but now you also forced out a bunch of chrono boosts to get spent on that robotics facility to get those Observers. And like you mentioned, we haven't really seen him focus on the obs too much. So he's kind of, you're slowing him down a little bit with that.
Imagine if those Adepts would not have gone into the natural and he doesn't see the Dark Shrine immediately. There is a good chance that GunGFu just goes for the Robo, and if he goes for the Robo, I think it's pretty much game over. Or at least you go for the pylon first and then you can go for the Robo. But GunGFu didn't have all that much money, so he couldn't warp in multiple DTs at once. They were slow warp-ins too, so all of that didn't help. And now in the end, we have just kind of stabilized once more. Krystianer definitely has a bigger army, a more mobile army, and we are doing the same thing as what we were doing in game 1. GunGFu is going to try to turtle all the way up to disrupt this, and Krystianer is going to spam Zealots and Stalkers, and he's going to try to win the game before the disruptor count gets too high.
Yeah, and the Stalkers moving over towards that 3rd base. Force field comes out, blinks away. GunGFu has a couple of Immortals with that, so very dangerous to just try and contest this straight up. But Krystianer is doing what he's done every game in this series, the move into charge, getting the Prism out, and of course those attack upgrades. But for GunGFuBanDa, it's back into the robotics bay. And this is where things got interesting too, Kev, because we did see the disruptors, but they didn't end up being like the biggest component of the army for GunGfu either. He kind of got Krystianer to build way too many zealots and then just overwhelmed him with Blink Stalker micros. So this is a very interesting moment as he has everything set up to go for this attack. He has the charge as well, but it's going to separate, just kind of clearing things out for the Prism. So he's going to turn this into multi-prong.
Yep. If you're only on 3 bases, it should be doable for GunGfu to stabilize, but it really just comes down to making the correct decisions and getting your units in the correct places. That cannon does finish up, but it's 1 cannon against 4 zealots. Nice round immediately. I would actually focus the Prism there, GunGfu. I think if you go for the Prism, you make your life a little bit easier. He's going to push the Observer away, so he could wipe in defensive DTs, but that's not working out. Now Krystianer is going to try his luck on the bottom side as well with the Stalkers, but those Immortals and the batteries are a little bit too much to deal with.
Yeah, the Stalkers Zealots all get choked up trying to go down that ramp. So I feel like that's a moment where maybe you need to just try and right-click something while those units are retreating. But the rest of the Stalker Ball goes over towards the natural, and he's going to bait out another force field and take some minor losses on the way out. But that Prism is still up in the mineral line. He's continuing to add more and more zealots to this. So for GunGFuBanDa, even though he's holding on here and not losing the workers, he can't mine out of this base. So Krystianer's just like, I'm going to funnel units in here. My 4th base is finishing. You're only mining off of 2 right now. So if this Prism gets
I was blinking to the main.
It's crazy.
I would have actually really sent 1 zealot to the edge there. Give yourself high ground vision and blink the Stalkers into the main base as well. The good news for Krystianer, though, is that he did already kill 2 Disruptors. So that Disruptor count that could have been at 3 is now all the way back to 1. And that Robo definitely took a bit of a beating. I would have loved to see Krystianer rotate the Stalkers and actually try to blink into the main base too, to make it an all-out assault in the main base. I think it would have worked out really well. He didn't dare to take that risk, maybe worried about a Disruptor being ready to fire into the Stalkers that did blink into the main base. This was all promising. He is going up to 4 bases, but with the way that Krystianer is playing, Nate, it's kind of the same as earlier today. He just needs more damage than he's been getting so far.
Yeah, and the Zealot's going to go back in the main. The return of the Prism, like you were talking about, focusing that down earlier could have changed things big time. Some of those warp-ins do finish. It's enough to continue to distract, and the Stalker Ball moves back over towards that 3rd base. He's just going to take 2 and dip, but at least the pressure in the main is relieved for now. Stargate is going to boot up 2 Stargates, so we'll see him, I guess, go back into the Phoenix to deal with the Disruptors down the line, and another Warp Prism. So I can only imagine the Stalker pressure will continue, and we'll probably try to throw some more Zealots inside of the main of GunGfu. And he's doing that greedy thing you were talking about. We have 3 bases for the red Protoss. For the blue guy, going up to 5.
Yep, there is a DT in the main base that's going to swipe up on a couple of pylons. Recall has been used. GunGfu does have a Dark Temple on the top side of the map too. It's really smart to play around with DTs here, especially because Krystianer is not a man that has made too many observers throughout this series. Obviously loses a lot of Warp Prisms, so he keeps on rebuilding all these Warp Prisms. At the moment, I would say this is not all working out for Krystianer. I'm also a little bit confused by his Templar Archives, because he's not mining a lot of gas, Nate. He's been on 3 gases for this entire game. I guess the Archons will break force fields, but Archons are not good against Disruptors and are not very good against Stalkers either. So I'm a little bit confused about the addition of Archons here, unless it is just to break force fields. Then it would make some sense.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that too, because he's just been trying to overwhelm him. So the force fields are a big part of that. There's not a ton of them available, but we know that if he thinks he can get the YOLO dive onto the Disruptors, then he's going to take it. So Stalkers blink to the right. Nova comes out and hits a lot of the Zealots on the west flank. I don't really see how this is enough to break the army of GunGFuBanDa, but this again just kind of feels like he's going for the drown him in units. As a huge Zealot warp-in hits from the north side. I think that Prism was set up over there. Yeah, so with a few Archons too. That is the 4th base of GunGFuBanDa. And Krystianer's 5th is still up and running, but doesn't quite have the workers to saturate it just yet as another big reinforcement wave comes in. And that's something we're going to keep our eyes on here. How many Stalkers is he going to build? Because GunGfu, if he gets up to 45 versus 10, I don't really care how many Zealots he's able to get. He's going to be able to micro against them at least. And even this little DT kind of mixed into the army since there's no observer gives vision.
I mean, that just did not work out at all for Krystianer. He basically had two armies fighting at once, but as you said, he didn't have enough at the bottom. And then in the end, he really struggled trying to kill that Nexus. Battery overcharge was big, the battery was well protected, and GunGfu just finds himself in a really good spot. Even if he has been outmined, even if Krystianer has a lot of bases, GunGfu's got to absolutely be loving where this game is going for him, because he simply has the better army. And Phoenixes are very solid sometimes against Disruptors, where we have situations like we had on Cosmic Sapphire, right? Where the armies are medium-sized and there is a lot of surface area and you can aim move your zealots. But if GunGfu just maxes out, the Phoenixes are really not the most reliable answer to deal with Disruptors. It's so freaking hard for the Phoenix to commit and fly over 30 plus Stalkers, maybe a couple of defensive Archons for GunGfu. Because for GunGfu on the other end, I would absolutely love to see some Archons now. Krystianer is in trouble and he needs to pull off a little bit of a miracle to break the man that has just been kind of unbreakable in the last two games, even though there was a big opportunity in the previous game. This game, though, I think GunGfu has been very, very solid.
Yeah, this is, again, it's turned into that very defensive situation for him, but he's been able to get a few blows back. He's still been able to take that fourth, and really when it counts, he has not been down and out, and even just these counterattack moves have been so nice, taking the main base out of play, going over to the Stargates, all four Phoenix just kind of chilling there, but he knows he can see them, he can anticipate, and I'm sure we'll see GunGfu continue to lean heavily on the Stalkers with that Disruptor Ball, but he's getting his DT blink and his +3 attack. So the last advantage that Krystianer really had will be going away, and except I guess the fifth base. That's probably the biggest thing that he has against him. But
oh my goodness,
once they both max out, we've seen that that's not always enough.
39 zealots, Nate. I think it's safe to say that he's gonna send it, isn't he? Because nobody ever just wants to stay on 39 zealots forever. That's just not an ideal army comp. GunGfu's army, though, is freaking big. It would make so much sense for GunGfu to have 2 or 3 Archons. They are great against the Phoenix. They are fantastic against all the zealots. I think that's the only way that you can maybe lose a few, as the Phoenixes do expose themselves. And Nate, 3 out of 5 or 3 out of 6 Phoenixes fall before anything even happens.
GunGfu, his patience. We're gonna have to call him Zen Master GunGFuBanDa after this series, because there have just been so many opportunities for him to get baited by this ridiculous number of zealots and all the pressure that Krystianer has brought. But he's taking advantage of the choke points. He baited him forward, like you just saw with the Phoenix coming over the Stalkers. He's like, "Oh, the Disruptors will be right behind this." He's like, "No, I'm just using the Stalkers. I have that many," and he's gonna try now to make this incredibly late switch, it feels, into carriers, but the upgrades are going to take forever. The construction of these units will take forever, so he's going to need some massive fights, and that is not the massive fight that I'm talking about for him to be able to do it here, Roddy. 4 DT drop inside, and he can actually depower the Stargates, completely cut the head off the snake of the transition that he wants to make. Depower it, he could go for the fleet beacon, and even shuts down the 6 being taken outside the main. Krystianer definitely knows how to take bases and build units, but GunGFuBanDa has done a really good job of just playing the game and doing everything he needs to do to secure it long term. I love what we've been seeing out of him.
Yeah, GunGfu has looked very good. I think in particular in this game. The last game, I think Krystianer handed it to him a little bit. This game, GunGfu just had a very good read on the situation. Found great damage with the DTs as well. And Krystianer really is just running out of steam. You cannot run into this many Disruptors, into this many Stalkers. Probes have been pulled. Phoenixes are going to do their thing. And he will lift a couple of Disruptors. But the Stalkers, Nate, are a different problem. And even though we have Zealots for days, I think eventually one good Nova should take care of business. I gotta say though, the Zealots, Probes, Archons, and Stalkers are doing pretty good here, but I don't think it's going to be enough for Krystianer.
No, just not going to be enough. The rest of the DTs are continuing to go ham inside of his base. The defensive DTs are there because we don't have detection at the front here for Krystianer. And GunGFuBanDa, after another 17.5-minute banger, finds himself up 50 supply, and the only thing that we thought that might have worked here for Krystianer is locked. That's just that carrier he still has building on the depowered Stargate. I don't think it's going to finish anytime soon.
Nope, and that's actually a lot of resources that are currently tied up. He could definitely use those resources elsewhere, but a lot of his gateways are actually unpowered, so he just can't even spend the money. There is still a decent-ish economy, and GungFu's economy looks, I think, a little bit bigger than it actually is, because he's obviously oversaturated with 1 or 2 bases, and 1 base is mined out. But this game is all over. Krystianer tried to break GungFu, and GungFu was chilling on 3 bases, going up to 4. He was not able to do it. GungFu got the disruptor count up to the number that he loves. And it's mostly the Dark Templars, I think, that really made the difference. GungFu just got a lot of info with the DTs and found a lot of damage over time. And he started spending a lot of resources in static defenses, Nate. And that really is all there is to it. If you want to stabilize against the Zealot Stalker Swarm, you just get a bunch of cannons, a bunch of batteries, and then eventually you get your disruptor count up to the moment or to the number where you want to go. And he was fine. GungFu's looking really good. And Krystianer needs to switch things up. Maybe we need to start going for earlier aggression, maybe like the early 2-base stuff, or even a 1-base opening, because that first game, it worked out well, but I think GungFu dropped the ball a little bit on not getting enough cannons and batteries. Game 2, he should have won, but he didn't. But Game 3, it looked a bit hopeless, so I think he needs to switch it up now.
Yeah, I think that I'm on the same page as you here, Kev. He's tried to just do this thing where he eats the map and just eventually chokes him out. But GunGFuBanDa, he's got a very thick neck, very hard man to stranglehold in this series, Roddy. He's been able to withstand just a tremendous amount of endless pressure. And I think the biggest thing that got me excited about that game, that third game right there, is the way that he did the same type of defensive play. It looked very similar composition-wise on both sides, but he did find that way to get the backstab. He got the DTs out. He was able to kill enough probes that the ones that he lost from that early pressure were all accounted for, and it never got into that moment where he just could not deal with it, where he's at like half the army supply. Because 30 Zealots is awesome when you're 30 supply ahead. But 30 Zealots pretty terrible when you're on even supply and you're maxed out. Because, yeah, I mean, GunGFuBanDa knows in that situation, the only way I could lose this is if I overextend and get completely surrounded by charge lots. So more power to him. I think he's adapted throughout this series incredibly well.
I think there was a little opportunity for Krystianer when that Warp Prism was alive in the main base forever, and he got warp in after warp in, and those fights in the main base were close. I really think the play would have been send 1 Zealot to the edge of the main, allow your own Stalkers to blink into the main base, and make it an all-out attack into the main, start unpowering some gateways, and maybe you can overwhelm your opponent. I feel like not bringing the Stalkers into the main base was a missed opportunity, and honestly, maybe the only opportunity he had in that game, because besides that, GungFu just looked very, very solid.
Yeah, we're going into inside and out, and I think we're going to need to see that adjustment get made by our blue Protoss player, because otherwise, I don't know how he's going to stop this man. He's gotten the read on it. He's figured it out. In the red, leading 2-1 in the bottom left, he is GunGFuBanDa.
Really turning things around, and in the top right side, we're looking at the main base of the young Polish Protoss, who needs to make another comeback here in the playoffs of the DreamHack Masters Atlanta Europe Regionals. Down 1-2. This is Krystianer.
And I am interested to see, hopefully, a different angle for the opening here. Both probes will cross paths in the middle of the map, so no clear sign of shenanigans. But for inside and out, you've got the ramp leading into the natural. This typically lets people feel more comfortable being defensive. I don't think you want to be greedy at all versus Krystianer if he's just going to keep slamming adepts into you. So on that hand, I totally get it. You need to just play the most straight up middle of the road style possible. So for GungFu, I don't think he needs to change up too much. I'd still like to see him give himself something that can go out and deal damage and be harassing in that way. But I don't think that he wants to do anything crazy that would just die to what Krystianer's already been doing. Put the pressure on your opponent to adjust their strategy. You've just picked up 2 maps in a row after a kind of ugly game 1. So all the stress has to be on Krystianer to find a way to adjust his approach or do something a little bit different to catch GungFu off guard. And to me, all of that works in GungFu's favor. So he's got to be feeling good going into this map.
Yep, especially after all the trouble that he was in, I think, in game 2, because that was a game. Okay, we have gone back to the island. Yeah, that's kind of cute. I mean, he just keeps pulling this off, and this really does put him a little bit ahead. I'm convinced about that. Like, if you freeze up one probe, it's like, yeah, okay, that's kind of annoying, but I think it's kind of even in the end. But getting 2 workers this early on, basically at this point, GunGfu is only mining with 12 probes on his minerals, and then one of the probes actually has to mine in the back. This really is a sweet little play that Krystianer has just brought back. We haven't seen it in a while because normally people prevent it from happening, but yeah, good stuff coming out of the youngster.
Yeah, and if you think about it, 2 workers just not being able to mine for that amount of time, over the 18 seconds to build the pylon, I don't know, like 20 seconds to kill it, you end up losing, I think, a little bit more than the 100 minerals that were spent on putting it there. And there's also just the mental aspect of it too, right? It's a little bit annoying to see that and have to deal with it, but he's able to get rid of that, and we have the expansion taken first by Krystianer in this game.
GunGfu might become aggressive. He still has a probe chilling in the top left side, and he's like, hey man, you make a lot of adepts, but I actually think if I just make a bunch of stalkers early on, there's a chance that I can get something done. Krystianer does get a good scout off on when that Nexus went down, so he knows that it's a bit later than his own. If I was GunGfu, I wouldn't fight with 3 stalkers, but fighting with 4 I think is kind of doable. 4 stalkers against 6 adepts is a doable fight, as long as you stay at the range. You obviously don't want to let the adepts get right on top of your stalkers, because then 6 adepts will win the fight. And Krystianer's warp gate is done so quick. GunGfu is actually going to have to recall out again, Nate, because 6 adepts maybe, 8 adepts absolutely no chance.
Yeah, and it's like, we talk about how the stalkers can kind of run, but there's just that many adepts shading over that he can't really waste time there, because obviously losing any would be tough, but this many coming back means we might have to have the clutch cybernetics core wall off here, Roddy, instead of just the shield battery. So that's something he will need to be wary of, as this is definitely enough adepts to punch through that building battery. And there it is, the cybernetics core on top of the ramp to block once more. And he's like, okay, at least you're investing something that actually has a pretty significant cost to just cancel over and over again.
The follow-up is a robo as well, which is kind of interesting. Maybe this is going to lead into one of these immortal resonating glaive attacks that we have seen Krystianer do before in this tournament. It's making an early observer, and I think that's because the Nexus was a little bit later, and he's not totally sure why the Nexus was later, as he lets the Adept Shade finish up, finds 3 Stalkers all by themselves. Stalkers do not have Blink yet. 2 Stalkers are very low on HP. Stalker number 3 will fall. There's actually some good potential on these adepts. Even if there is a battery here, a lot of probes are exposed. And Krystianer is just pretty good with his adept stuff, man. But there's also 2 adepts of GunGfu on the other side of the map, and now Krystianer needs to take care of that.
Yeah, the pylon got built on top of the ramp, and it's fully finished too. So Krystianer's adepts cannot get in quite as deep as they would have otherwise wanted. However, the stalkers back home for him do deal with those 2 that were in his mineral line. So things getting nice and wild to start it off, but Krystianer with the adjustment this time for that robo and a very fast warp prism, Roddy.
Yep, could just pick up these adepts and fly them into the corner of the main base, unload them there. This could definitely be kind of big. He can even go for the 2 sets of adepts. That's exactly what he goes for. He had 3 adepts left over, a bit of an uncomfortable number. So he's going to shade 2 adepts into the natural, and the other 2 adepts are going to get dropped into the main base. Krystianer is not done fighting yet. He already has an Immortal at home. He's gearing up for a second Immortal. Stalkers did not find the Prism, did not find these adepts. This can actually really hurt for GunGfu. I think Krystianer is going to kill a decent amount of workers here.
Yeah, the Prism just opens things up so much, and that's the biggest thing, is he's been relying on that wall off, but now it's going to turn into like a double juggle situation, because he's not only watching that ramp, but now has to watch for all of these attacks coming in from every which possible direction. So the shades are going to go down to the natural, as he's going to try to grab one more probe from the main, and it just doesn't end. And of course, that Prism isn't just for picking up and dropping off. If he moves everything away for a little bit, he could warp in a whole nother round and just even kick off more chaos. But GunGfu's going to get inside with 4 stalkers that can one-shot a probe, the big number, right, to make sure that the shield battery doesn't mitigate all the damage. And this is a great counterattack by GunGfu. Holds off against the adepts and somehow ends up with a significant worker advantage at the end of it.
Yep, and he's not done yet. Now he's going to blink into the low ground or onto the low ground, gets a few more. He can even escape towards the left, just needs to wait for Blink to finish up, and it does. That's sick. Krystianer technically had to take no damage there whatsoever if he was on top of this, because he definitely had more than enough units to be bulletproof defensively. He did not expect it. He was very focused on his adept aggression and the attack that he's clearly gearing up for. Did he lose his original prism during all of that? He did as well. So the prism went down, has to rebuild it. Krystianer is gearing up what I feel like is going to be a big 2-base all-in. But if GunGFu doesn't expand, and so far it doesn't seem like GunGFu wants to expand, it's going to be really hard for Krystianer to get a lot done, right? With 2-base versus 2-base.
Yes, definitely. And I just love that this game has taken such a turn after the first couple matches. Krystianer realizing that he will not be able to just do what has been working, and GunGFuBanDa striking back in a big way, finally putting the pressure on our blue Protoss to be the one getting aggressive. And even in that moment, getting 2 adepts sent over towards that natural mineral line, and he might be able to get a probe, he might not, but he's trying to cause some chaos and make things a little bit more difficult for Krystianer, who is now clearing out, making sure there's no third base, and he's going to get he's going to lose 5 more probes to those adepts. Okay, that's a little bit more than I was expecting off that.
I actually think Krystianer should load up the Immortals and go into the main base, because the natural is unbreakable. If you want to get something done here, I think you have to go for the main. He looked at it. Krystianer is thinking about it. And there's an observer in a very good spot for GunGFu, who does have a safety battery in his own main base too. Krystianer is trying, but there really just is not anything that he can do here. So he is forced to expand, but he's still down in workers, and he does not have a forge, Nate. So there is +1 well on its way for GunGFu. Krystianer is going to work without any upgrades for a very long time.
Yeah, and GunGFu made this whole series work behind on those upgrades. That's one of the things that Krystianer has had a lead on in all 3 games up to this point. So not having that anymore, things kind of flipping back over, that's going to make those trades even a little bit more brutal. And now 2 adepts into the natural. There is absolutely nothing here to deal with it. They're going to kill a probe or 2, go straight to the main and say,
this is painful.
Well, this is devastating.
This is really painful. The only thing that Krystianer had was a tiny worker lead and obviously a quicker third base. I would cancel this shade, by the way. Does not cancel it. The Stalkers were already heading towards the natural. But that is 9 workers going down. He's not even done. You make it 10. Krystianer is now having enough of it. Tries again to get something done in the natural of GunGFu. It's almost crazy, right, to see him being this aggressive, because he is the 3-base player, technically. But yeah, he's just losing probe after probe. Krystianer is just terrified of the idea of GunGFu ending up with a bunch of disruptors once more, and he wants to prevent it at all costs. But it's almost sad to see someone be this aggressive when clearly they don't have to be this aggressive.
Yeah, and now the Stalkers blink down the ramp. He's going to go straight for the Prism. The Sentries were ready to force field the Immortals away, but they did get a few shots in. And Roddy, I think the other side of this too is just that this is going to be a very difficult counterattack if he brings it all the way. Now, Charge is finishing for Krystianer, but the money needs to be there to build the Zealots, and if he dumps it all into those, he won't be able to add anything else. Still 3 Immortals for GunGFu, looking good.
Yep, but maybe Zealots can turn the tide. I'm going to take a look at the Nexus. There is enough energy for a recall, but GunGFu needs to be a little bit careful because he did lose his War Prism, and being aggressive without a Prism against somebody with Charge, yeah, that could be a mistake. That was actually still very close, and in a weird way, it wasn't all that bad for Krystianer because he's still the 3-base player against 2-base GunGFu, and obviously the main bases are going to start drying up a little bit. And with this many Zealots, it doesn't look bad actually for Krystianer. Even though he's down a full upgrade and there is even +2 on the way for GunGFu, it does not look bad at all for the young Polish Protoss.
And not too shabby. It's really crazy that we have all of this madness, all this blood spilt, 29 probes killed by GunGFu, 12 for Krystianer, and he's going to catch the Disruptor in the middle of the map. And this is exactly the kind of play that he needs. This Observer kind of picking up on everything, and even a Zealot here. So Krystianer buying as much time as possible, but the Stalkers all going into the natural. They're going to come around the Zealots onto the Immortals on the outside, and he's going to go for the recall one of them will be able to get sent home. But
oh my goodness,
I mean, if you blink down the ramp, those zealots will be waiting for you with open arms.
GunGFu is going to lose almost every single stalker here. He will lose every single stalker. Oh my goodness, GunGFu really got impatient there. Obviously was down a base, maybe felt like he really needed to do something, but he had a lot of power units. He had +2 on the way. This move out was not it. Zealots can be so freaking good defensively if you can swarm your opponent, and they have. Krystianer is now taking a monstrous army supply lead. GunGFu had one disruptor, it was exposed. He had a prism, right? But I guess it got picked off as well. Actually, he never rebuilt the prism. He lost the prism defensively on his side of the map. And wow, this game has really been turned on his head, because even though Krystianer was going up to 3 bases a lot quicker, he really was behind, had an inferior army, inferior attack, was losing probe after probe, but that move out was not it for GunGFu. And now GunGFu is the one who needs a magical comeback, and he's gonna try to make it happen once more with batteries, cannons, and disruptors.
Well, those disruptors are gonna need to hit absolute pay dirt. Just gets a single zealot with the first Nova, however. And he's trying not to get pulled all the way down the ramp, because he knows the zealots are going to get around him. He knows it'll probably be a very aggressive blink directly on top of everything. So it's warp ins in the battery to defend the natural and just buy as much time as he can.
Goodness. He just sniped the observer. The only observer of Krystianer just got sniped, and GunGFu has a dark shrine, and that means that GunGFu can stabilize once more. Krystianer blinks into the natural, snipes one of the disruptors, but GunGFu can now warp in DTs for days. He will find a prism as well. Krystianer is going to deal a lot of damage here, Nate, but I don't think the game should ever end because of the defensive Dark Templars.
He just has a lot of firepower in that way. Huge damage output. The Stalkers can blink around and try to avoid them, of course, and they're not quite on top of these forces just yet. But if GunGFu can kill everything and maintain his army, and you can see the lights start to open, big shot onto the recalling Stalkers, and I don't know, Kev. Still a pretty dicey situation, as the Zealots are going to kill some probes while the DTs get to work on them. Still takes a little bit of time even to kill those boys.
What is happening today? We've had so many lead changes in a lot of the games that we have seen in the lower bracket here of the DreamHack Masters Europe. This game, it felt Krystianer is losing, then he's absolutely winning because he cleans up almost everything, but he makes a very, very committed attack into a lot of cannons, into a lot of batteries, and after losing his observer, so he clearly lost a lot there, dealt some damage, but he definitely didn't do enough damage to justify losing as many units as he did. GunGFu with +2 on the ground weapons is still looking, I think, very good in this game, despite the fact that he's down a base. He's got DTs running into this base on the top side of the map. Where are the observers at? One is in the natural, one is on the other side of the map. And we know that Krystianer just wants to end these games, but I don't think he can anymore, Nate. He is going to be forced to play a longer game again.
What an absolutely ridiculous turn of events. This match is just freaking nuts, Roddy. It's absolutely crazy the way that this has played out, with GunGFu always having to take the slower base, but just being, you said it earlier, unbreakable. Very, 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 very well done and thought out defense. The DTs, the Hail Mary play, just beautiful. Unkilled 11 probes, recalls, sends him back out the other side. So he's going to do everything he can to make sure he doesn't just toss them away. And every time Krystianer moves out with all of his units, it's just going to be another big opportunity. I mean, that natural is looking very juicy. There's no cannons in the main, so
bit of a comical game, but it does feel that GunGFu now is where he wants to be, and Krystianer probably feels that he's on the clock. He is getting his own +1, so he is working on something, but I think we can truly see that the players are feeling a lot of pressure today. We've seen some silly things from players where they are in pretty damn good spots. And Krystianer is honestly in a bit of trouble. Does have a few Archons. Archons are not going to be good against Disruptors, and GunGFu is not going to stop building Disruptors. I think there is only one thing that could go well for Krystianer, and that is that if GunGFu moves out too early or overexposes his Disruptors, and it will allow Krystianer to potentially get a great surround and whatnot. As long as GunGFu doesn't do that or send a Nova into his own probes, I think he's going to be fine.
So to say, it takes a lot of guts to throw a Purification Nova through your own mineral line. You need to be 100% certain where it's going to be ending up at the end of the timer. Look at that little spotter DT guy. He does end up getting caught.
There's no answer for Disruptors, Nate. Like, Krystianer is playing PvP on extreme hard mode here, God mode, or whatever they call it in single player games, because the bigger the armies get, the easier it will be for GungFu to land Novas. And Krystianer will drop his own RoboBay. This is the first time in the entire series that he drops his own RoboBay. Maybe he feels like there is no way around it, and he will, even if he doesn't like it, be forced to build his own disruptors. There's the second Robo. I don't hate it, because now I actually be like, okay, then maybe the game is going good for him again. Even if he's down an upgrade, he needs to do something about disruptors. And if that means getting your own disruptors, even if it's not your favorite unit, I do think it's the correct choice.
Yeah, could not agree more. It's going to become a problem no matter what. Unless you can get the Zealot flank onto all the disruptors from behind the army, which did happen once. I don't really see that. It's not really the kind of thing that you can rely on. And I think GungFu, even in that last game, demonstrated that he was able to keep them separate without exposing them too. When he was going down the ramp on Tropical Sacrifice. So that was that bait play where he pulled all the Phoenix of Krystianer over.
I like the triple Robo even. A man of extremes, but yeah, you may as well. It really is the way for Krystianer to win this game. Needs to do a little bit of running around at this point, because obviously his disruptors are not quite ready yet. He also has 26 Zealots. Now, 26 Zealots don't normally complement a disruptor army very well. Okay, he could technically surround it already. He has a lot of units coming in from the bottom. This can actually get very awkward for GungFu. Oh my goodness, this fight is going to be wild. Who lands the big Novas?
He's got some of the Zealots on the backside, and if it turns into just Stalker versus Stalker, we do have to keep in mind the upgrades definitely favor GungFu. Picks off the Disruptor in the face of death. He's going to recall his own Disruptors out and just keep blinking the Stalkers away while he has a counterattack hitting that right side Nexus. So 13 probes died. The DTs are hacking and whacking and smacking that Nexus down. Gets another pick off, blinks back again, and GunGFuBanDa maintains his aggressive posture while securing his own fourth base in the bottom right. So he's managed to keep his economy going. Krystianer is going to have to rebuild that one more time. But I mean, if there's anything to say bright side wise, it's the number of robotics facilities, right? Being able to build up to 3 disruptors at once, if he has the money, is definitely huge. We also have observer speed getting researched by GungFu, so he can try to maybe just deny the vision, as those DTs have been clutch for him in this one.
I mean, GungFu is definitely outplaying Krystianer a little bit, but I gotta take unfortunate by sniping that one disruptor that came in from the right side of that battle, the Stalkers. It was very smart of GungFu not to attack it immediately, because if he would have actually just right-clicked on it, I don't think he would have killed it. What he did is he walked a little bit closer to make sure that all the Stalkers could shoot at once, and that really was a brilliant call, because I think otherwise that disruptor falls low in HP, but the Nova goes off, and he ends up losing 7 or 8 Stalkers there because he couldn't blink away anymore. Just a very chaotic fight, but I do think that GungFu, even though he found himself in a bit of a trap, made the best of it, landed some good Novas, got out of there with a lot of the Stalkers, and he still maintains that upgrade lead, and obviously he's got all them DTs with Shadow Stride as well. It does feel that this is kind of where GungFu is supposed to shine, and the kind of game that Krystianer really tried to avoid at all costs. DTs will go for it. Cannon gets picked off. There is an Observer, Nate, but you actually need a lot of units to fight 7 DTs.
Yeah, turns out 7 Dark Templar in general are just very strong, especially with +3 attack. So huge amounts of damage come through. He's going to go for the pylon next. Don't know that he has a recall, but the Zealots are going to get on top of him. And, well, I mean, the DTs have Blink. So good luck catching him.
Krystianer, I think, is very good at what he does, but sometimes a bit stubborn. And obviously, if you want to become a more complete player, you want to break into the top 8 or top 6 of Europe, you need to be willing to play these kinds of games a bit more often. You can really see that he's just kind of out of his element. Does still have a very realistic chance in this game. It's not over by any means. Like, all he needs to do is land a few good Novas, but you almost feel, just looking at his demeanor, that he doesn't even believe that he's going to land these big Novas, because this really is GungFu's game, GungFu's stomping ground, and Krystianer right now finds himself in a situation that he basically tried to avoid at all costs in every single game so far.
Yeah, and then he's continuing to bring that pressure with the DTs here. Big jump on the right side. He's going to be able to get this base. Also, I think there was an observer there. He might have been able to pop 2. So lots more damage coming in. Lots more damage coming through here for GungFu. Counterattack is going to hit, but not quite enough there on the disruptors. And what an absolutely ridiculous series we're in, Roddy. I don't know what to say anymore. Krystianer feels like he has to go home. Don't think that he can really stop GungFu's army unless he brings everything back.
That was so funny. GungFu just fired 2 Novas in random directions because he's like, I kind of know there is an army, but he's paying attention more. Rico has been used, and that means that Novas have a lot of potential, but also the Nova Krystianer have a lot of potential. That was a great play by the young man from Poland, and was that the shot that brings him back? He does end up losing all of his own disruptors. Can GungFu get out of here, Nate? Does GungFu have a recall? The answer is yes. GungFu has a recall, and he is going to recall all but 3 stalkers out of the main base. Ends up losing one of them and killed 40 probes during all of this madness.
Still a DT over there. DT with 19 kills in the northwest base. Truly a terrifying foe to have to go up against. And this, I really can't believe that this matchup ended up getting this crazy, Kev. This has been an absurdly ludicrous PvP series we bared witness to. And I'm exhausted. GG, GunGFuBanDa takes it 3-1.